Coach Bartz, episode number 53 of the Path to Fall podcast. Thanks for coming on. I'm excited to talk to you. We've had some technical difficulties going on, but it's surprising that that's the first time that we've had anything like this happen all year. So
nice. Lucky number 53, I guess.
Lucky 53.
Yeah.
But we were talking about before the computer stopped working a little bit, this past basketball season and maybe how you have built a team culture around COVID, meaning you found ways to get the boys together outside of basketball, get them to get to know each other off the court and build some of those relationships outside of the basketball arena.
Yeah, and I guess I looked at this, we just came out of the assembly with Rob kind of saying similar things of so much of this is kind of how you look at it, and you could complain about every single part of this, or you could say, what can we take here as positives? And, I really just tried to focus on that hardcore as a mantra. Every workout, we're thankful for this, whatever it might be, any minutes together, because we just don't know. One of our assistant coaches, his brother passed from COVID early April of last year, right at the beginning. It was kind of one of the first deaths. And it was, when we left in March, it was I was kind of telling my classes, all right, maybe we'll be off for a week or something. We just had no clue, and his brother, I just thought he's going to be okay. And it just, as COVID did with so many people, took a turn for the worse, so quickly. And I think that was such a wake up call for all of us in the basketball program, to watch him, and sparing the details of just how brutal it was to lose someone that not that it wasn't, at any time of the pandemic, but that early, and how no one knew how to handle it. And, that hit me hard. I guess, and to remind the kids of it didn't matter if we, everyone's, are you going to have a season? Are you going to, to me, it was, who cares? Let's go 24 hours at a time. Miss Bristow, Mr. Wren, Mr. Hubeck, Mr. Smythe, everybody worked so hard to get us anything. So when we had those workouts starting, I was man, this is Christmas. Who cares if we end up playing games, or here we are together. And, again, you could look at it honestly, it took hours to prepare 4 guys per basket. Everyone had their own ball. You had to wash hands every 15 minutes. A coach could only be with 4 players for 2 weeks, and then you could rotate. So I'm and meanwhile, you've got and I love it. Maybe a 9th grader who's never played competitive basketball on the same day from 4 to 5 in the cohort with Chris Winborn, who's, a high level Division I player. And you're trying to, and again, you could look at that as a negative, or you could watch Chris take the time to speak to that player and help him, or, just that kind of stuff. So I really tried to, I guess, roll with that organic, the opportunities that arose. Matt Cooper, incredible leader, just amazing kid. He was in a group with a ton of young kids, which, again, totally dumb luck, because he was such an influential. And yes, you could look at it as oh, Matt's not with all the other varsity guys, and we can't put our offense in and stuff. After a couple weeks with my assistants, I'm listen, guys, we're just not going to be able to, I'm a junkie. I research like crazy in the off season. I study coaches, break film down, offense. I write in books. I got all notes everywhere. And I early on was this can't be used this year. We're going to pull our hair out if we're making this the focus of our workouts. Let's look at this more macro and kind of how we can, do some things that might be more helpful for us than just offense or defense.
I think that's so important, having some of the older, talented guys work with some of the maybe JV or freshman, sophomore players, and just to be around those guys is such a culture shifter for any program. And, you know, we were doing last year before COVID hit workouts in the gym at 6:30 in the morning. And, you know, maybe the workouts weren't high grade workouts. We're doing like burpees and sprints and that kind of thing. But the fact that everyone was together and the freshmen who were just coming to Gilman were in the same room as some of our senior leaders just rubs off so much.
Yeah, and I think it's just to me, that's the most powerful part of coaching is, you know, that like it doesn't, you know, as Coach Gilman says in the book so much, like, yes, athletics can be, you know, teach character and all that stuff, but it's not automatic. And I think that, you know, Gregg Popovich is known of the Spurs to, like, he coaches his best players the hardest. You know, he'll call timeout and scream at Tim Duncan on national television. And, like, that's how he built the Spurs culture. And, you know, to me, I take that approach from a character and leadership side with my best players, you know, of like, you know, with Christian or Jalen Rucker, you know, for like whether they want it or not, like their response to others is so transformational within a team because they're high level guys, they're Division I players, they play with all the brand name AAU teams and, you know, all that stuff. And their role at Gilman is different because, you know, it's just a different team aspect. And, you know, if you watch, this is probably the thing I'm most proud of Christian about, is if you watch him as a ninth grader on film and then you watch him last year, like his response to someone dropping a pass or just maybe a play that someone else would make on his team thrill team, you know, like he's dapping people up. He's running over, I got you, you know. You watch the game, John Carril, Matt Parker hits that corner three, the buzzer beater. Matt Parker actually missed a shot the previous possession, and Christian passed it to him. And one of my assistants was actually, you know, pulled me to the side and said, "Coach, Christian's got to shoot that ball." And I said, I trust Christian to make the right play. You know, like let's let him, you know. So we came down. We're down one. We draw up the play, and of course he gets double teamed, as you know is coming.
Yep. He
doesn't even think about forcing a shot, throws it right to Matt Parker, who, you know, God love him, he's a football player first, but watching Christian have that trust to just know that that's the right play. It didn't matter who made the shot, and I actually just sent this to a college coach and was like, this is all you need to know about this kid right here, is watch this last minute. Watch the teammate miss a shot and then watch him pass it to him again without even thinking. And like, to me, you know, like when Matt Parker feels that, like I knew that shot was going in when the pass was on the way to him because Matt's like, that trust is there. You know, it's not a divide between like who's basketball first and all. Like, that's what's so cool about this culture. And what we're trying to do is, you know, see guys that maybe, just like we were talking about with the podcast, you know, like come together or learn things that you never would have previously. Like Christian Wimborne and Jack Tortolani ended up being like incredible friends, you know, and inside jokes, and like that never would have paired together if it wasn't for them both being willing to be vulnerable and like make a new relationship and be themselves with each other.
So is that transformation that you're talking about from 9th grade to 10th grade year, is that a product of pointing things out to Christian that maybe he doesn't notice on film in his 9th grade year in terms of his body language and his trust of his other guys? Or is that just a personal progression? Or how do younger players find similar characteristics that you're saying that that's all you need to know as a college coach, is that this player has the, I don't know what it's called, emotional development, or he's a team player. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
is that experience or is that coaching?
Well, I mean, I'll say that, you know, I think to me, it goes even deeper than that. It goes to parents and family and household. And, you know, when you meet the Winborn family. You know, if you rewind all the way to freshman year, so Christian, you know, he basically wouldn't take no from Gilman. And, you know, his parents were kind of like, listen, Chris, like literally every school in this area wants you to come play for them. And like, he was just kind of like, Matt, it doesn't matter. I'm going to Gilman. And they were like, all right, well, we love you. We support you. And, you know, of course, everyone's in his ear of, you know, that was the year before, you know, things were down. You know, we were 1-15 in the conference when he was coming here, and everyone's like, you know, dude, what are you doing? Like, what, that's, you know, bad move. And he didn't waver. So like, even then as an 8th grader with all this pressure and like D1 this and shoe circuits, and, you know, it was his vision, and he had the courage to just tell people, I'm going to do something different. And, you know, his freshman year, we were still kind of changing culture and going through some growing pains. And, you know, we lost some tough games, and you know, in this culture, especially basketball, you know, I think there's 1,600 kids in the Division I transfer portal right now in basketball. You know, it's like if things aren't going perfectly my way, I'm going to look somewhere else. And, you know, God love Tavon Winborn. You know, he's my first text after almost every game. Like, whether we lost by 30 or by 2 or we win, good job, coach. Kids are playing hard, man. You're doing the right things. You know, after the season ends and we're 4-14, look, Chris, like, you should leave, man. Like, you know, there's other opportunities. And they never even thought about it, you know. And again, like, you just like, that's really all I need to know, you know. And then we literally almost exactly flipped the record the next year, and we're 14-5. You know, and watching, like, that didn't happen, and we were still picked to be last in the conference that year and everything. And, you know, like, it doesn't just happen randomly, you know. Like, the trust of, you know, Danny Rosenfield is a similar story at Spalding that year. Christian's sophomore year, Christian made a cross-court pass. Danny hit a 3. Danny hadn't played a lot of varsity minutes at all. We were actually down 15 in the fourth quarter. I'll never forget it. Nothing was going right. It was a rescheduled game the Tuesday before Thanksgiving on the road in Annapolis against a sleeping beast of a team that had young players, a new coach, completely unknown. Like, it was like everything we would not want. Early conference game, couldn't make any shots. And it was like, you know, we had struggled the year before, and we're building the culture, and I'm working so hard and like trying to do things the right way. And you just, you get that feeling of like, this could really go bad quickly of, oh, it's the same feel, you know? And like, we come in, there's 6.5 minutes left. I'll never forget it, down 15. And Matt Cooper goes, guys, like, this is what coach talks about. Like, this is the adversity. Like, we have a chance to practice dealing with this right now. Like, now is the time. And I just looked at my assistant coaches and the group that was in. I said, no one sub anyone out. We're just rolling with this group. We had 3 starters on the bench, and I was like, it just doesn't matter. Like, this is the group. You know, hearing a kid say something like that, you're like, put the whiteboard away. We don't need anything else than that. And we go on this incredible run, and it finishes with Christian throwing a cross-court pass to Danny, and you can see Christian in the background, like, holding his hands up, like he knows the shot's going in. And watching that, like, that was the moment that wave went with us, where I knew, like, this could be special. And it just was a year of, like, Danny hits that shot. You know, we're starting Tortolani at center in the A conference, you know, like, he's playing out of his mind, doing the right things, and everyone's kind of like, Tortolani's a starter? Like, you know, Malik got hurt, like, right away. There's all these things that could have gone like a negative feel. And then God love the kids buying in, and Coach Gouline with the character education.
We've been doing that this year. It's just really helpful, really impactful.
Man, and we did it. So we did it. We were the kind of the guinea pig last year. And I mean, sometimes you just sit there, and we would do it pregame sometimes, and I would just sit there for like 5 minutes after, like, you just saw some and heard some things that like you never thought would come out of those kids. And like you watch them get more comfortable. It's really cool.
Are there any specific memories from Coach Gouline's sessions with your guys that stand out to you as just memorable moments from what he's doing here at Gilman with that character ed program?
I can't on a specific, because I think that, and you know Jeff, and you've done it now with him, this program, he wants no attention. There's no celebration. There's no look at me. There's no rah rah type. He's just so genuinely invested in the kids. And I guess my hesitation was, okay, this guy's not on our staff. And Jeff is the first to admit, like, he can't make a free throw. Like, it knows nothing about basketball. And it's kind of like, when a substitute teacher comes into a class, the vibe is totally different,
Right.
I was kind of like wondering, is this going to be tough for Jeff to get his foot in the door enough to like get them to open up? And like, again, I don't know someone that works harder at their job. I've never met someone that works harder than Jeff Gouline. And that was the piece that the kids knew, like, he's a safe space, because he would help anyone with their math homework, and he'd bend over backwards to come in early or on a Sunday. Or so like once we got past that, I knew this was going to be amazing. And like, again, I think that, like, and the reason with my book, like, especially in basketball, it's like puffing your chest out. When you dunk on somebody, you gotta do something, and technical fouls and the like the crazy things that I see at games and within our recruiting, and everything, like, it's supposed to be one way. And I think Jeff really, like, we're very like-minded on this stuff, but I think he helped me show them like ways to be able to talk about things that maybe were hard to talk about. So like when you talk about Christian and the growth and stuff, like, I attribute that almost entirely to Jeff's sessions, because like this year, I mean, Christian was the first hand to go up every time, and when we first started, he maybe didn't talk for 2 or 3 sessions, and then you start to see him, he talked about his sister once and how much she meant to him and how much he looked up to her. And it was like, all right, now we're really getting there. And that's where like a Tortolani learns more about a Christian, and they bond over whatever might have been said. And, like in games and during timeouts, guys are saying like, guys, remember, this is what we talked about with Coach Gouline, and again, like, you're standing there as a coach, like, we're good. Like, if a ball goes through the net one more time for us to win this game, that's fun and that's cool. But like, dudes are talking about things we were discussing in our character ed, like in the middle of a 1-point game.
Yeah, it's
good.
more important than any X and O's that you can draw up is how they're feeling that moment and the trust that they've built through the program. And that's one of the things I really like about Coach Gouline's sessions is it is all about the players, right? You just have your notebook, but he's really just facilitating the conversation between the players and the team. It's almost like he's not even there. He's just asking the questions.
Yeah.
And he asks great questions that allow the guys to just speak up and share certain things about themselves and how they feel at practice and what they feel like in a tight game and what they think about in the huddle. It's just things that usually go hidden on a athletic field.
Yeah. And I think he's something else I and obviously this kind of goes with teaching, but like thinking on his feet in terms of, I remember one where we just talked about teaching, and like, if you were making a list of like what's a good teacher and because he was in an interview process with some possible new math teachers, and he thought it'd be interesting to hear from the kids of like, what do you look for, what don't you look for? And we were like 45 minutes into it, and he's like, all right, guys, I gotta move on, like, he's just so good at, like, it was clearly something they wanted to talk about, and like, they weren't, don't get me wrong, they weren't like trashing a teacher or like, they were just saying like, they're talking about learning styles. They're talking about like, I need this. So, if the teacher doesn't do that, that's hard for me because I got to get notes. And like, again, it just turned into this conversation that was like, and Jeff was kind of like, who cares about what I like wanted to do here? Like, this is the thing we should keep talking about, and like both of us are walking. Like, I took a picture of the board of what Jeff wrote of like, kind of what's in the categories and stuff. And he did too. And because it was like, we just picked their brains to a level that like we would never be able to put that list together again, and here we had access to these amazing kids that really are the customers, I mean,
it's also so interesting to me that Gouline is a math teacher, and a lot of his conversation facilitation reminds me of a humanities class, almost what I try to do in my English classes, with somewhat broad, relatable questions that get people talking, that you probably don't see as much in a math classroom as you do in an English classroom. But I know he works really hard at it, but it seems almost natural when he's out there doing it. It's like he's had years of practice teaching English classes when he's talking about teamwork and sports and character and athletics.
Yeah, and I think, again, I've had the privilege of getting to know him, personally as a good friend as well, but he misses nothing. Like there's never, he's paying attention to everything at all times. He's got all bases covered. And he's just that dude that when he's around, everything's cool because Jeff's there, like he's always got a solution. He's always calm. He listens, it's not because he certainly could be a know-it-all, with how hard he works and like the scenario, he practices his lessons still, like, I mean, that's a pretty incredible. And so like he's earned that capital, built that capital up with the kids of like, if this guy talks, we should listen, right. Because he gets up and he's here at whatever time in the morning, and he's got review sessions on Sunday, and
the buy-in for his sessions are almost contagious. Like I remember Tortolani last year, after having gone through that basketball season, he came right to the lacrosse team and he'd be saying, oh, we've got a Gouline, we're doing our first Gouline session today. This is awesome. And he really, as a leader of the lacrosse team, allowed the other guys, or motivated the other guys on the lacrosse team to buy into that. So I think it's contagious among the teams here at Gilman too.
Yeah. And like, it got to the point where, like I said, Jeff kind of laughs at how little he knows about basketball, but I just like pushed him further. I was like, will you sit on the bench with us when you're available to? Will you come to away games with us when you're available to? He would sit with me at halftime. Everyone impulsively runs to the locker room and, they're all charged up over whatever just happened. I like to just gather my thoughts for a minute, take everything in, kind of not be so worried about the last 30 seconds of the half as the other 15 minutes and 30 seconds. And he started to stay back with me, and it was great because I could, and it's really more important, honestly, of like, how did it feel on the bench? Like what are guys saying? What's body language like? Am I missing anything? Like, are we, and again, he has no basketball knowledge. And I think at first he was kind of like, why do you want me on the bench? Like kind of, and I think he started to see where I saw the value in it, and he comes to Saturday practice. He, like, again, it's not like he just shows up and does them. He invests the time in being there and just taking notes and like watching dynamics within a team. And, again, he's just been a partner, and, these are all things that the other cool thing is like, nothing's more important than this to me with our kids as an outcome. But at the same time, we have 2 hours a day. We're playing in the A conference. We've got to do a lot of basketball stuff too. This is almost the best of both worlds because he prepares everything, and then we get to participate in what is so important. And I'm not doing the planning. Honestly, it's a delegating type responsibility that we've gained because we don't have someone else capable of putting together what he's able to, When
he's sitting on the bench with you and you're talking at halftime, does he point out certain aspects of your players to you that you hadn't seen during that first half? in terms of their body language and how they're reacting or what they're talking about on the bench or just the atmosphere? Or are there things that you don't notice?
I think he is really good at, I think he's a listener first as it is. I'm much more outwardly emotional, type personality. He always lets me speak first. And that's not like a egotistical thing. It's just like I'm obviously more emotionally invested in the the game than he might be. So he allows me, I think, to just kind of spit for a minute, and then he'll say, well, what do you think about this? Or it's never and something he's really good at is he can express something without making it like this is what I think you should do, and if you don't, you're an idiot kind of feel, which I think sometimes people do when they give a suggestion. Mm-hmm. His is kind of like, here's something to think about, and then if that's not what you're gonna do, then he goes with you to plan B. It's not like, oh, you didn't pick what I said, so you're on your own now. His loyalty, I just think unconditional love is the foundation of any relationship, coach, romantic, friend. Like, just knowing that's like, if I'm gonna be just as close with someone who scores 0 points as 30 points, that's when really good stuff can happen. And Jeff is like that personified in terms of, I think that would be what I would say when I said earlier that like everything's okay when he's around. It's because of that, in my opinion, of like a judgment-free, we're in this together, we're going to fight and figure out anything that we need to get this done.
So you said earlier that you've always been a basketball junkie. When was really the first time that you fell in love with the game? I know you've played your whole life. You played at Gilman. When did you fall in love with basketball, and who kind of got you started in the sport? Who were some of your influences?
Yeah. So I guess early on, so Tony Jordan, still here, lower school assistant coach, was really my guy. He was our head coach. He took over when I was a sophomore, played for him junior, senior year, had that transformational relationship with him where, if I had something going on off the floor, I had his home phone number and could call him. And when I was in college, we kept in touch. Like, he was very much kind of showed me the way of like what a more than a coach could be, and then my father passed away very suddenly when I was 20. And it was almost like Tony just said, all right, well, I'm going to be your dad now, and like he was there for me through everything, and so again, I talked about unconditional love. Like I learned it there, firsthand. And obviously, things were a struggle for a while with losing my dad, and Tony was just incredible for so many years, and then so basketball wise, I was a student assistant coach at Franklin and Marshall for 5 years, and so Glenn Robinson was the coach there. He won almost 1,000 games. He's the all-time winningest coach in Division III history. And I got to I grew up as a sponsor. We sponsored Naval Academy midshipmen that were on the basketball team, and Don DeVoe was the coach at the time, who had coached at Tennessee, coached Dale Ellis, some big names there. And Navy was kind of his retirement job. And he just let me be a ball boy. Like, I was allowed at any team function. And I was, like 11, just sitting there like, a nerd, like learning about defense and rebounding. And I loved it. Like, I was not just there to shoot on the rims or, like I was there like learning basketball. And, I was never, as Tony would attest to, some super athlete. I had to work hard just to get a couple minutes here and there. But I loved to study the game. So Coach DeVoe actually wrote me a recommendation for Coach Robinson. So Coach Robinson was kind of like, all right, well, I guess we can do this. And by the time I was a senior, I was in charge of our scouting reports, our I'm 21 years old, kind of talking to the team, like, and they were my fraternity brothers. So it was like, again, like kind of a, but he's a coach, but he's us,
but he's the same. Yeah.
And like, here I am talking about what Washington College is going to do offensively and like how we're going to trap them. And, he really just trusted me to that level, which I was really appreciative of.
What made him such a great coach, Robinson?
Interesting. So his background was he really didn't know anyone. He didn't have any kind of crazy playing history or NBA hookups or anything. He just randomly, he got the F&M job in like 1967 or something, and he just wrote Dean Smith a letter and said, "Hey, Dean, ton of respect for you. Can I come learn?" And Dean Smith like put him in a motel, paid for all his meals, like kind of classic what, one of my books was The Carolina Way by Dean Smith. And that's just what he did, was like, wow, this guy really wants to learn. Like, great, come on down. And he just opened his books to him. So everything we ran was Carolina everything. So coach recruited for that kind of system. It was not a lot of sets and stuff. It was learning how to play and kind of just going out and getting good players to fit that. And I think he was, his coach was a unique personality. We joke with him a lot, and, he wasn't like the warm and fuzzy type of coach, but he was like, he had, I can still see his cursive handwriting on his note cards, with his note card boxes of, excuse me. And I used to joke around about it. And now here I am with my books and, like a kid. It's like my friends see the GTV and are like, "Do you seriously have a book like G-Rob did?" It's like, I guess I do, but I think he was a details guy. So I guess my education from him was totally different. Like, I didn't get the, let's do the team building and, kind of the Tony stuff that, what a coach could be for a player. It was more of like a basketball education, and I learned so much about, defensive positioning and like, how to build a program and, things like that.
It's just so interesting that you've always been fascinated by the details of the game, the X and O's of the game from a young age.
It was weird. I mean, I didn't, and now like with technology, Tortolani and Danny Rosenfield would always joke with me, was I in my cubby, which is that little office on the third floor where like I would go in, and whenever I had free time and like just go on, on my YouTube and Twitter coaches that just post like, now guys are posting like the best plays from the NBA last night. And like, I can just sit there and be like, wow, like we're going to do this. And like, just crazy, in the lab, as they would say,
In the lab.
Yeah. Cooking some stuff up there, but, it's just so fun to, and I like to bring it and say, I watched Steve Nash draw this up for Harden last night, and like, I love it. Let's see if it, if it falls flat on its face and like, we don't have James Harden and it doesn't work. Like, I tell the kids like, all right, my bad. Like, I'll be back in the lab. We'll find something different. Like, forget that. We're not going to use that. So I think it's definitely like and they'll send me things like, "Coach, did you see, someone running our stuff last night?" And, stuff like that. So like watching their interest in the game has been fun too.
Who are some of those other college and NBA coaches that you look up to as mentors, or, we talked about Popovich a little bit before. I don't know if we got that part, but
yeah. So he, I would say, culture wise, and just, I have a ton of respect for him as a leader in terms of, you watch his activism in terms of speaking out. He's also the best, after quarter interview, because, they're contractually required to answer 2 questions, and he literally answers both with 1 word and walks off the camera every single time, which I find hilarious, because he wants to be with his team and thinks the other stuff is like so stupid. Like, why do I have to do this?
Especially after a loss.
It's
brutal.
It's just it's funny actually, but
I think one of the things I actually I think we watched in college, or there's a video out there of the Spurs getting their touches in. Like, they're always patting each other on the back. They're always, bumping each other. They're almost fostering relationships from just, getting your touches in, tapping each other when you make a good play, just being there for each other. Just those minor gestures can go a long way, I think, on a team.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because our big fella, Roman Hines, is going to play at Swarthmore for Coach Landry, who played at Davidson for Coach McKillop. And, I'm just like a straight shooter of like when I meet a new coach or something. And like, so he came to our workouts to watch Roman, and he literally left his phone in the car because he wanted Roman to know. And he's walking with me on the sidelines and like, why did you do this? Or what? Like, I'm with that, because some dudes come in and are like, oh, I'm here to see Jake. And like, they're texting on their phone and like, it's not about the kid, and you can see that right away. So when I see a Landry, I try to latch on like, hey man, can I come watch practice? Can I, I just like dive into that stuff. And he's let me come up a couple times. And so something they do, which I guess I was a little thrown off at first, but like if the ball's not bouncing, like they're talking, they're holding each other's shorts. Everyone's holding on to the other, like at the bottom of the legs shorts, because they're always connected. And like, that's his thing, and like the players have no like, oh, this is kind of weird, or like they're like fighting to get next to someone they want to get next. Like you see their investment in it. He doesn't cut anyone. I think he's got like 25 guys, and like, you go to a small gym like Hopkins, they're like sitting in the bleachers behind, and like, the Hopkins fans he's essentially got 5 guys in the end of the bench, which they're like timeout guys. Like they've got all the bench celebrations. They've got all, like, you just watch this culture and it's like, wow, like, yeah. And they're 28-0. Like it's just like at Swarthmore, which
that's
like
so interesting to have such a big roster and keep those guys invested and on board, even though they're not getting out there and playing.
And the funniest part is like, you see that at a game and you're kind of like, oh, like he's a nice guy. Like he keeps, like those kids practice. Like there's not like, yeah, like Jake, you go stand over here, buddy. Like, and wear your uniform at the game. Like you're running the sets, you're guarding the players. Like
they're putting in all the time.
Yeah. But he's
showing up there.
Yeah. But he's very genuinely like their practice participation is no less than their leading scorer. So Landry's genuine. Like, again, they see that genuine investment. So like, why would they just sit on the bench and not cheer? If Landry shows them the respect that he does, they'd run through a wall for him, and his one of his best rivalries is Hopkins and Josh Loeffler, who's another, like, those are 2 of my favorite dudes. I mean, they just, and like they're both Division I coaches, but they're at amazing Division III spots. They've got young kids. They're, and like, yeah, I've got some NBA guys that I could say and like that I know or whatever. It's not like, to me, like, and like with Christian's recruiting, Jalen's recruiting, like I got to know the Army staff really well, and learn about some things that I could steal from them. Like that's what I'm always about, is like, how can I evolve by
relationship?
Yeah. I mean, I talked to Northwestern for an hour and a half the other day, just learning about like, why do they think they stand out, and like what are things Coach Collins does, or what did he take from Coach K and what did he do different from Coach K? And,
So what are some things that you do culturally with your programs, maybe similar to the short holding thing or the getting your touches thing? What are some things that stick out to you in terms of building that connected culture with your guys?
Yeah. So I would say not as tangible as that yet, or maybe even as what I feel is like best fit for us right now. I pay so much attention to the treatment of each other. So like, if I throw you a nice pass and like you just kind of run back, like I'll literally call timeout in the game and be like, seriously? Like what? And then it's like, oh, my bad. Like that feeling of appreciation, that feeling of
you got me the bucket, so
Yeah, like
point at me or something.
Yes, and like when guys are on the floor, like someone takes a charge and like someone's too cool to run over and help him up, like they'll hear that horn so fast. Like I can't wait to take them out and talk to them about it, and they're gonna get a chance to go right back in. I'm not like a grudge holder and like but like I'm gonna tell them like you're gonna sit because like our guy just gave his body up and you're like too cool to help him or dive on the floor for a loose ball. Like if you're a leading scorer or whatever, it doesn't matter to me. Like this is who we are. So I think that like the treatment of each other is important, and like the eye rolling, the like throwing the arms up in the air when someone misses them on a long ball, or like that's just like that's non-negotiable for me. Like I'll stop practice, I'll stop a game, and like again, some people, some like basketball people would be like, dude, play your best players and like deal with their personalities, and like somewhat true, but like their personality can't include negativity. That's not acceptable.
It's contagious. I mean, and body language says a lot, and I think you're talking about how much you watch film. It all shows up on film, and it's so contagious, and it spreads so fast to the next guy. Like the guy who doesn't point at the guy who gave him the pass, there's something going on there that is not right.
Pete Carril, I'm unfortunately turned into that guy that is always carrying quotes around. Pete Carril, the godfather of the Princeton offense. It's like a little old man jumping around when they beat UCLA. Just a awesome basketball figure. One of his great quotes that I've never let go of is, "You can have one donkey, but you can't have two because then they breed." And I've always just had that in the back of my mind of like, you can sometimes have, and it's not like someone not buying in, it's just someone doing something maybe a little differently than other people do, and you kind of got to deal with them differently, and that's okay. But if you've got two things going on like that, it's over. And like that's such an important, and like I'll be honest with kids of like, listen, if you were that guy, Jake, like I'm gonna deal with Jake differently than Cesare. Like that's just the way. Like if I coached you both the same and you both have different personalities, I'm not doing my job because you're going to respond differently to different things. So, the whole, kind of like straight line treatment of things.
Or just the standard, or just the term, the standard. There are standards for some things, but in terms of relationships and the way that you treat certain players, it's just how you would treat anyone in your life. Your friends all have different personalities. You're going to treat them differently. It should be no different on the athletic field.
Yeah, and I'm really hard on them for like excuse type stuff of, like if film don't lie type old school talk. Like you show, and I'm going to use Chris as an example just because I've used him quite a bit with this of like, he's got incredible potential, all these coaches, and like if he's got a bad spurt, whether he's tired, he's hurt, whatever it might be, and I'll show him the film and be like, yo, you want me to send this to Northwestern? And he's like, nah, man, like his thing is like, and this is where you learn, is like, I'm not accusing him like, oh, you're being selfish there, or you're like, I'm not telling him what he was feeling because I don't know. And then it comes out like, coach, I'm handling the ball. I'm getting a box and one on me. It's like, I got to take this kid out of the game more, like to make him more efficient. Like those are the kinds of conversations where I'm not showing him film as an accusational piece. I'm showing it as like, this isn't who I see. Like, why was this your body language or your whatever? Like, or I'll just pull him aside and say, I think getting to know my kids really well, like I can tell when like they walk into practice, like when they're not themselves, whether their girlfriend broke up with them or they failed a test or had a disagreement with a teacher or something. Like it's right on their face, So I think that, showing them that without the accusational, like they know, but if he came back at me like, why don't you show this to Jake, or why, Cesare should have done this. Then it's like, stop. That's not available right now. We're not going to that at all. This is about you. And I think keeping that on that accountability piece is so important. And that's something that I honestly am working on myself, and I share with them with officials, of like, I get so caught up in like, it's not that I really even care. It's that I care so much about the kids, and I feel something being taken away from them because someone's not working as hard as we are. Like some of the officials take a very different attitude approach of the game being about them at times, I feel, and we're all there for the kids. And I think that gets missed sometimes. And that's when I start to get really frustrated. But like, I think showing them that I'm working through that as well isn't me being weak or me losing control of the team, or like, you'll watch them and, you could go back on GTV and they'll come over and put their arm around me and say, come on, coach, like, we need you. Like, don't worry about that travel. Like, let's stay focused here. And it's like, you're right. My bad. Like, they can help me too, and that's when it feels, when guys are that invested. Or, I love timeouts where I'll call timeout and just say, what do you guys see? Like, what am I missing? Because it doesn't feel like us today. What do we need?
So interesting, because I think this is where the teaching and coaching philosophy carries over, because that was some of the advice that I got when I first started teaching 2 years ago was, look, I'm right out of college. I'm going to make so many mistakes. This is the first time I'm teaching in the classroom with students who aren't much younger than I am. I haven't really read the books yet. It's my first year with the curriculum. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, but they respond so much better when I admit those mistakes and say, look, I didn't notice that, or I messed up, or I got that wrong. I just think that philosophy of owning your mistakes when, you're the head coach and you're supposed to know everything, but not really. I mean, you can be totally honest with your guys, and they'll know that. They'll respect that.
So much. And I think with my classes as well, but I'll never forget not this Tortolani senior year. It was at the beginning of the year, and like, things were just crazy. And like I said, I was driving to Annapolis, and it was just really hard. And there was one day where I just started practicing. I always start practice with a huddle. I said, guys, I'm just not myself today. Like, I just feel I'm lethargic. I'm like, because I'm usually a loud voice. Like, I'm pumped. I love basketball. Like, I love being with the kids. I'm telling them corny dad jokes, like on the side, making them laugh, just like, that's the fun part of the day. And like, I love it. And I didn't feel that way. And I just told them, I said, guys, I don't know what's up. I don't know what's going on. And like, I need you today. Like, you're not going to hear my voice as much. And like, and like a month or two later, Tortolani came to me one day and said, Coach, like, I'll never forget that day that you did that. And I kind of thought to myself, like, what day is he talking about? And he was like, when you told me that, like, that showed me that, like, I could tell you when I was having a hard time. Mm-hmm. And like, I thought about it and was like, wow, I guess that's true. Is like, it doesn't show that like I'm going to be a bad leader that day. It just showed that, like, we all need help sometimes, and we're all sharing responsibilities. And I learned something from Jack that day, that he shared that with me, to that it's not. And like you said, with kids, like, I remember that as a young teacher, like, what if I don't know the answer to a math problem? And like, and then coming to Gilman, it's like, these kids are so smart, like, kind of back to that thinking. And then it's like, I just tell them, hold on, like, let me think about this for a second, or let me get back to you. And then like, you actually follow up, and they're like, wow, this dude cares enough to actually follow up, or like, not just BS me and pretend he knows how to do the problem. And, like that, it goes back to Gouline of like that investment in the kids. Like, they know, yes, I'm their leader, but we're on the same team. Like, it's not me versus them. I think that's the worst feel you can have within a team of, the leader and the followers is me versus them. And I think that buys you the opportunity to sometimes be like, guys, we got to buckle up today. Like, it's almost winter break, and like, we got to get this unit in before and they're like, yes sir, like getting their stuff ready, and like, because they know if I'm going to go that route, they know I mean it and it's genuine. So like I think building that within a culture is really important.
We talked a lot about Christian and Tortolani and some of the other players that you've coached recently, and I'm curious who the best leader is that you've coached in your career as a basketball coach, and what qualities they had on the court, off the court, and really some of those memories that come to mind when you think about that player.
Yeah, I guess I would, a fear of giving like an outright winner, that I could go to some guys for specific things, of like the Matt Cooper timeout at Spalding. Like I will take that to my grave of one of my coolest moments. And especially for a kid who had been quieter as a freshman, sophomore, and kind of, if he missed his first 3 shots, it was kind of like, all right, I got to make sure I tell Matt, keep shooting, because he might start to question himself. Like for him to step up and say that in a timeout, it was like, okay, so that was special. I think that Tortolani was such an interesting, I honestly, the funny story is, as a junior, I almost didn't keep him. He was very borderline and kind of like, just it turned out, we had a discussion about it, and it turned out to be like, let's do this because this would be great for him as well as the team. I think he was trying to not just be Johnny Lacrosse, and like have different components to him of like, he comes from such a lacrosse family, and like he really just loved basketball and the guys, and like it was like, all right, let's do this, and didn't play many minutes but worked his butt off in practice. And then come senior year, Malik goes down, and I'm like, one of my newer assistant coaches is like, what are you doing? Like you're like, Jack's not big enough to play this spot and all these things. And I'm like, we just gotta, like, he's a winner, man. Like, just, we're gonna use him in spots and like ways he can contribute. And like, God love him, he's jumping in front of runaway trains that are about to dunk on him, taking charges. And guys like Christian, their eyes just get big, like, whoa, he is fearless, man. Like, and that starts to change. So I think Jack's mindset, Jack's like willingness to step to someone and say, you need to get it together. Like, this is unacceptable. Mm-hmm. And not because he's trying to like look good in front of me. It's because he genuinely cares about the team that much. I think Jalen Marshall, haven't mentioned his name yet, but for watching him kind of grow as, again, a quieter guy who will go guard someone 6'10" or 5'4", he just doesn't, he'll get, right in there. You can, I could keep going back to Indian Creek and guys who were willing to buy in, and, when it wasn't convenient, like come to a school no one had heard of, or come to Gilman, who was, the last in the A conference, and all, like Christian decided to, like, we're looking for those kinds of people that want to be different, and like make this, I'm very open about what we are and who we are. And like, if you want to come here and kind of just get a 2.0 and kind of cruise through, like,
it just doesn't happen.
No, like when I go recruit, I'm watching parents, man. I already know the kid's good enough. If I'm watching them at a game, I'm watching how do the parents, what does the kid do when, he gets taken out of the game and he doesn't want to? Does he go to the end of the bench and not slap his teammates' hands? I always ask, it's kind of a entrapment, but I ask the parents, like, yeah, how are things going with this team and this coach and stuff? And, oh, he's an idiot, and we're, like, we could be doing so much better. It's like, nice to meet you all. Good luck with everything. Those kinds of things are what I'm focused on in the process, because
so much of it is learned at home.
At the
dinner table.
Yeah. And just divisiveness of like, kids are getting in the car and like, why is Jake shooting that shot? Like, you should have the ball. And, but Jake's my best friend. And like, do I hate him now? And like all that, like these icky things that kids have to go through when it's really so much more simple, and like they can be spoken to in a different way and encouraged and work through difficult times. But
so interesting because I'm teaching a lot of these guys that we're talking about, Christian and Jalen and Charlie Guyton and Tortolani, and a lot of the basketball guys are in my English class, and their leadership that they're taking from the sport of basketball just shows up in an academic world too. It just, all those guys work super hard. They participate in class. Like, I'll get emails like from Christian at 5 a.m. It's like, Mr. Scott, can I redo that essay? And I'm like, yeah, you can redo the essay if you want to do better. I have no problem with that, because I think I was that guy too. If I didn't do well on something, I would go and ask the teacher and be like, hey, what can I do to boost this grade? It just shows that you care, I think. And I'm all about that, but I think a lot of that is learned on the court, on the field, in sports.
And I like you alluded to there, at parents too. Like, Christian's parents will be the first to be like, I don't care if he chose acting or basketball. Like, we'll be all in on supporting him. And like, when he's emailing you at 5 o'clock in the morning, that's not his parents waking him up being like, you need to redo this paper. That's Christian setting an alarm and being like, I'm going to email Mr. Scott and say, I want to do, because he's doing it for himself. Like, that mentality, like, doesn't surprise me at all. And I think we can teach it to some kids, and I think some kids are listening and want to learn, but I think some just
naturally,
like, oh man, like, Christian just is one of those guys that, and as I shared with Northwestern and, Harvard, and like, he, the schools that are calling, like, it's not an accident, like, his list of guys that, Harvard's offered one guard in the entire country for the class of 2022, and it's Christian Winborn. And like, he is that special, and they've noticed that, like, it's cool to see that actually come to fruition for a kid that deserves it. It's not just because he's a really good player and would be good in the Ivy League. Harvard can't recruit that way. It just doesn't work that way. You have to be the whole piece. And it's just it's so cool and makes me so happy because he deserves it. It's a really fun part of this job, honestly, to see where he ends up going.
So I want to maybe touch on the book that you brought in, Season of Life. It's the first book that I read before I came to Gilman. So I'm
cool.
Excited to ask you why you chose Season of Life.
I think the biggest thing to me that I always come back to, if I had to pick one thing, is the fake masculinity of, like, like he said, the three worst words that a child can hear, or a boy can hear, is be a man. And like, I really believed in that. And I think and I'm sure you've run into this with reading as well, like, you needed validation, or like someone, like famous, like a New York Times bestseller, to be like, and you're like, yeah, I think that too. And like, then you've got talking points, you've got evidence. And, me being in an all boys school, I think kind of been on a mission to be like, I've cried in front of my team. I've told them when I'm having a bad day. I've seen them do the same. And it's not like, suck it up, like, I think that's a bad phrase that I hear a ton of. And I still think there's a lot of coaches and I've been around a few, but that believe if the meaner they are to a player, the angrier they'll play, quote unquote. And I just have been so against that my whole life. And the more I coach, the more I feel stronger about that this can be done in a different way. And I think it all comes back to my reading of this in terms of, like, a mutual respect. And, like I said, with that fake masculinity that he talks about, of like what it means to be a man. And I joke with my wife of, like, I think, and, having kids, like baby products and stuff, like, we go to the pediatrician, like, I go to all the appointments. I do, Emily and I split everything. Like, I do laundry, I cook, and it's like, oh, well, Mom, when you do this, and Mom, when you do that, and I'm like, am I just an accessory here? Like, 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 Emily doesn't do that. I do that, and it's like, you feel, so again, when, like, there's discussions of privilege and all that stuff, like, I understand the feeling through that of like being marginalized by being defined by my gender, of like what a parental role is. So like I think as we've shifted to like mostly two income families, and you know, mom's working and dad's working, like dads are expected to take more role, you know, than in the child's caretaking. But like like if you watch commercials, and like I joke with Emily all the, like even some products, like literally products, like in their directions and stuff say like, you know, the mom should or she should, and like I'm like is this serious? Like, you know, it's just it's like it's difficult. So you know, like I think that for me kind of goes into this of like what a man should be. Like a man should be someone who does everything that women should be doing too, of caring about each other and taking care of everyone around you when you can, and self-care, and like all these differences that we have of like being a woman and being a man, I think are just kind of crazy, you know. And I think as you've probably gotten to see with some of those guys in your English class, like some of those dudes are deep, sensitive,
oh totally,
which is beautiful and amazing. And in some places they'd be told to like get rid of that, you know, and like that is taking away so many gifts from what could be something awesome, you know?
Yeah, it's one of the coolest parts of teaching here, in teaching and coaching, is like I'll be in class and I'll hear your basketball players like heartfelt expression of their feelings of the scarlet letter that we're talking about, which I would never think that, you know, guys would be super into. And then you go watch them on the basketball court later that night. It's almost two different people, but they can express those ideas in a certain way in one area, and then go play basketball, you know. And there are so many different sides to a man and what a man can be, and you can see that all here in different domains, in the classroom, on the court, on the field, and the musical. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, and you like, I watch with like, I said it at the, you know, at the faculty, you know, discussion about kids the other day with Malik, you know, of like, if you really need to know anything about Malik, like just go outside at about 7:55 in the morning and watch him hold his little brother's hand and walk him into school, and like give him a hug, and like watch Mason just worship the ground that Malik walks on. Watch Malik, you know, during the pandemic basically help both little brothers do their work, you know, like, and that's like, we have beautiful kids here, you know. Matt Cooper, like as soon as Teddy runs in the gym, Matt Cooper's like going over and like, you know, kidnapping him and running him around upside down, and like those like that free like ability to just be themselves just feels awesome. And like we've got that in our gym right now, and like it's such a happy feeling to be around. And as I say at the end of the last 2 seasons, like, all right, that's on you guys now to keep passing it to the next group. Like, this is what feels great. It doesn't just happen. Like, we worked hard to get this.
Carries
now
over.
We got to work hard to keep this and take it to your other sports. And you know, so.
Well, Coach, it's been a lot of fun today. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
It's great to catch up. I feel like I haven't really had too many conversations with you this year, but hopefully, you know, things are going back to normal soon.
Yeah, man.
So we'll see you around campus.
Yeah, would love to continue it and talk sports and leadership and all that again sometime.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.